Thank you, Joyce, and thank you everyone for being here to listen to all the work that we're doing to conserve these incredible species around the world. It's a real honor to be here. And I'm excited to tell you how the capacity building of WCN has literally empowered Cheetah Conservation Botswana to do the work that we do in the Western Kalahari to conserve cheetahs. To begin with, let's see, where did we start? As Joyce, sort of briefly said, I was lucky to grow up in some wild places, and I fell in love with wildernesses at a very young age. I knew I wanted to be a wildlife conservationist from as long as I could remember, and I wanted to save endangered species. I wasn't exactly sure which species it would be, and I thought time will tell. Let's see. And I got the opportunity to work in, there's my starting slide. And well, I got the opportunity to go to Botswana and work in a reserve called Mokolodi Nature Reserve. And Botswana has one of the largest cheetah populations left in the world today. I was really, really excited to go there. I was doing biodiversity surveys in the reserve. I was also running the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. And one of my jobs was looking after these two beautiful cats, Duma and Latotsi, which I didn't name them, but it means cheetah in Swahili and cheetah in Setswana. I fell in love with them. Every day I would go in, they would come up to me, they would be happy to see me because I had food for them. And they would purr, they would look into my eyes, and I got really, really inspired by these cats. And I started to think, well, these are wonderful ambassador cats. How can we start to partner with cheetah groups that are working throughout Botswana to conserve these beautiful animals? And so I looked around to see where those partnerships could possibly be. And I was incredibly surprised to learn that there was nothing going on for cheetah conservation in Botswana. Botswana was in the center of the cheetahs range in southern Africa, and yet we knew very little about how many cheetahs we had, their status and distribution across the country, and the threats to their populations. And I would go in every day and look at them, and they would look into my eyes as if they were saying, "You have to do something." So I thought, well, here's my opportunity to make an impact in the world, and I started up a cheetah conservation program in 2003. And cheetahs really do need our help. In 1900, we had about 100,000 cheetahs, and their range has contracted significantly, and their numbers have gone down alarmingly due to habitat loss, declining prey populations, increasing human-wildlife conflict, which is the biggest challenge for cheetahs today, and the illegal trade as well. Declined to that in 2016, we have just less than 7,000 cheetahs. So it's a really concerning decline. Botswana has a huge responsibility to play in this. Between Botswana and Namibia, we have 55% of the world's cheetahs left today. So it really is a core area for cheetahs. It's the heartland for cheetahs in southern Africa. You can see in 1900, their range covered North Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, down into India, and due to the threats that I've mentioned, they've now decreased into just these countries in the red areas that we see today. And the role that Botswana can play in cheetah conservation as a whole is something that we take very seriously. Most of the cheetahs in Botswana, we learned, are found in the Kalahari region, the Western Kalahari and the Southern Kalahari. So we knew that that's where we had to do our work. These are huge, expansive landscapes, incredibly beautiful. We still have free-roaming populations of wildlife, really good cheetah populations, wild dog populations, other carnivores. It really is an incredible area to do conservation. And we feel that cheetahs are fantastic flagship species for this region. They don't do very well in national parks, protected areas, because they're outcompeted by stronger carnivores. Being a wide-ranging, low-density animal, we need to think of large areas of conservation. Being at the top of the food chain, if we can conserve enough cheetahs, we know that the habitat and the other animals on which they depend can also be conserved. And if we look at the human footprint index of Africa today, and we can see, the red is where there's a lot of human interactions and things. The green is where there's sort of the least human influenced areas in the landscape. And we can see that this Western Kalahari area of Botswana is one of the most wild natural landscapes in Africa south of the Sahara Desert. But it's all not simple. We do have incredible wild areas, but we also have human communities that are sharing the land with these animals. And human-wildlife conflict is the biggest threat to cheetahs and wild dogs and the other carnivores sharing the land with these communities. And this is the thing that we knew we had to target early on. We had to reduce the retaliatory killings, because farmers would often see cheetahs, the fastest land animal on earth, as nothing more than a threat to their livestock. And when they'd see them, they would run them down with dogs, they would trap them, they would shoot them. This is what we had to change right away. So we knew we had to work in the Western Kalahari. This is our focal area. And we were invited to set up a camp in a sustainably run cattle farm in the Khensi region. And they were doing all kinds of sustainable techniques. They heard about the work that we were doing with farming communities, and they invited us to set up a camp. Now, it's a really tough area. This is our camp. It's a very rustic kind of bush camp in the middle of nowhere. And just to show you a little example of the expansiveness of where we live, here's a small video which kind of demonstrates that. This is our team, this is our camp, and we're really out there in the middle of nowhere. And you can see that there's no power lines to connect to. Like, how are we going to have an effective camp here? You know, in the summertime, it can get extremely hot. In the wintertime, at night, extremely cold. You know, we needed simple things so that our staff could actually live in these areas. We needed power so that we could run our computers, so that we could have lighting, so that we could have a fridge to keep the food cool. We needed power so that we could have a fan to keep us cool when we were trying to do work. There's a small education center there. We wanted to invite farmers to learn about sustainable farming. We wanted to invite the kids there to learn about conservation. We needed power to do all of that. And we were put in touch with this fantastic man called Steve Gold, who was instrumental in giving us our solar system. At one of my first ever presentation at WCN, which I believe was 15 years ago, I stood up. This was before we had a camp in the Kalahari. And at the end, Steve Gold stood up and he said, "What do you need, Rebecca?" And I was like, "Well, we need this equipment and we need, funding for this and that. And there's so much to do. I could work 24/7 and we need energy." And I was talking about personal energy to get through the day and do as much work as we can. And Steve thought I was talking about power energy. And he was like, "Right, I'm going to start this solar program. I'm going to enable these conservationists to live in these remote areas by starting up and facilitating getting donations of solar equipment." And so Steve, for the last 15 years, with his right-hand man, Peter, and Brandon, I just think you should stand up so we can all give you a round of applause.
Eating it up.
And that was the best misunderstanding that I ever had in my whole life, because he's gone on to provide solar power systems for over 50 projects around the world. So it's an incredible achievement. And actually, this system is now 10 years old, and technology has advanced significantly. The panels are not really providing our energy needs anymore. And Steve came out, he had a look at everything. He said, "You need a new system." So he came back to California, and he got support and donations. A big thank you to Catherine from Simplify Batteries, Brandon from Outback Power Systems, and Greg from Unirac. They have provided all of the components and provided a system that's worth over $120,000. And on Friday, it left in the container to Botswana. It's going to provide our power systems for the next 20 years. So you're amazing, Steve. And because we live there, because we're able to live there now comfortably and our team can be there, we're able to run our programs. We do scientific research. We count cheetahs through track surveys, through camera traps. We learn more about their behaviors and their land use needs, their spatial needs through satellite collars. All of this takes power. We need to charge our batteries. We need to have computers to download the locations so we know where the cheetahs are. And we receive a lot of information about cheetah behaviors that we can give back to the farmers. Only 6% of their diet is actually made up of livestock. They have really large home ranges. So if you do really good livestock management and protect your livestock, cheetahs will just move through your land and they'll move elsewhere. And it's been really, really effective to get this research done on the farmlands. And so we have a rapid response team because we're living right there, and people can phone us if they're having a cheetah problem, and we can go out and support them and help them to figure out how they can reduce their losses through using herding, enclosure designs, the use of livestock guarding dogs and donkeys and breeding seasons, all proven to reduce conflict. We have mobile workshops where we go out to the settlements. And we also bring the farmers to our education center to learn all of these different techniques. We are able to demonstrate. We have sustainable grazing going on in the land. We have breeding seasons going on, livestock guarding dogs, donkeys, etc. We can demonstrate all of these techniques. We also have our livestock guarding dog program running from this area. We take unwanted puppies from villages, unwanted puppies from animal shelters that are due to be euthanized, and we give them a second chance at life as wildlife conservationists. They come to our farm, they learn from our livestock guarding dogs how to be effective livestock guardians, and then we place them out with farmers such as Mr. Taoshi here, who used to kill cheetahs and jackals that would predate on his livestock. He still had problems, so he called us and we gave him a livestock guarding dog. His losses have reduced to 0, and he's now promoting the concept to his farming community. We also bring the kids to the education center so that we can give them increased knowledge in the incredible wildlife that they live together with. People won't realize that Botswana has so many endangered species, and they need to really have a global view of what an incredible biodiversity Botswana has. So we get them excited about conservation so that they can be the next wildlife conservationists. And we have a new program now that we've started in this, what we call the wildlife management area, and it's a corridor between the Central Kalahari Game Reserve and the Kalahari Transfrontier Park. And this wildlife management area exists. People are supposed to have wildlife-based economies, but at the moment there's nothing but livestock farming going on. And slowly, due to pressure from agricultural needs, they're slowly eroding this wildlife management area at the edges to turn it into more grazing land. So they need to start generating money from wildlife initiatives. So we've started working with these 2 villages, Bere and Kakai. We started off doing participatory planning workshops last year to ask them, where have they come from? Where are they now? Where are they going? What are their skills and expertise? What natural resources do they have? And what is their vision for the future? So we can start working together to develop some alternative livelihood strategies beyond livestock farming. And just a brief another another capacity building initiative that WCN has supported us with is putting us in touch with an organization called Conservation Strategy Fund. And they're economists. They use economics to promote conservation. And they're going to come out next year, if all goes to plan, and help us to do a livelihood assessment and see which of these potential livelihood strategies are most economically viable. We want to make sure that this young man living in the Kalahari, growing up today, has livelihood options, and that he sees a value in living with cheetahs and other large carnivores in this incredible landscape. If he wants to be a livestock farmer, he's going to know how to do it as sustainably as possible. If he wants to harvest traditionally the teas, the medicinal herbs, the honey that the Bushmen have collected for many hundreds of years and develop those into products, we can help facilitate that process. And if he wants to look into cultural and ecotourism initiatives, they will be there, and they will be creating a value for the wildlife to these people with which they share the land. So I just want to finish off by saying a huge thank you to the solar project, to all of you, our wonderful supporters, and encourage you to continue supporting us. It is a collaborative effort. We need all of your support to make sure that we can do the work that we do in the Kalahari and the other great projects we've heard about today. And a huge thank you to WCN for these fantastic capacity building initiatives.